I slowly start to doubt that Anke's dramatic reactions are 100% real. Welcome back to a new Hints and Theories video, this time to episode number 5, and oh my god, not many episodes left until the final. And if you want to know more about that special final we have in this season, then make sure to watch this video until the end, because I will tell you a little bit more about it. First of all, I want to mention a few things that are either related to the last episode or are more in general before we head into the tasks. And first thing I want to talk about is that, well, let's say special figure they have created for the season. So you probably remember that in the very first Hints and Theories videos of this season we talked about that figure which the producers had put together by putting all of the candidates' photos over each other. And then we had like this fictional figure there with that, well, slightly crazy face, I would say. And you have to know that after each episode there was like an updated version of that figure. So they took that photo of the candidate who left in that episode. That photo was taken away, and then the figure changed its look slightly in general. But after last week, when Philip left, so when our mole left, that figure changed dramatically. So I think we can assume that a lot of that figure is made out of the mole's photo. Now, if you want to see all the steps that figure went through, then make sure to check out my Instagram, because I will upload like all the photos there. But I will show you now the photo of the figure after last week's episode, so after Philip left. So as you can see here, it really changed a lot. Now, one more hint about last week's episode, which comes from DeMol on Instagram, and he is, well, I think I can say that he is deep down in an Anke tunnel vision, and he found one very interesting hint to Anke. So as you know, in 2019 the mole was chosen in the first episode. And now the, well, story, the history kind of repeats itself, which is actually also the theme of this season, as you remember. And the Molenjagers figured out that back in 2019, the mole, so the one who was the mole in the end, was asked a question about her job. And now last week there was also only one person who was asked about her job. And that one was Anke. And I think that would be actually a very nice hint to her if she really is the mole. Also in the beginning of last week's episode we had a quotation from the mole from 2019, so an actual link to her. But yeah, that fitted of course in general. And in this week's episode we also had a quote from a candidate from 2019, because, well, the situations are, let's say, more or less similar. Now, before we go to task number 1, I want to add one thing that I recognized in general. Of course, we were all looking on how the candidates behave now. So do they act like they did in the last weeks or differently? And I think that Jens was so eager on earning money this time. So I'm not really convinced that he's the mole. Actually, I don't think it at the moment, but he was so interested in earning money that I recognized it several times during both tasks. And I know that he did some good jobs in the last weeks as well, but I never had the feeling that he was so deeply interested in successfully ending these games. And this time he was, well, complaining about it several times. He was complaining about the visitors when they didn't really play along. He was also complaining in the second task about the others when they chose the Passfrage instead of the money. And I think he was very focused on earning money, and yeah, that just was a bit seemed a bit random to me. And one more general thing, I started this video here talking about Anke's emotional reactions, and then I started to doubt that all of them are 100% true. And I want to explain you why I think so. So I also commented on my last video that I have problems imagining her as DeMol because sometimes she seems so very emotional and jittery, and that I'm a bit afraid that she would actually reveal herself as DeMol by accident. But now I had some closer looks in here, and to be honest, if you watch her during the tasks, so while playing, she's very focused. She also knows very well what she's doing. Like for example, in task number 2, she was the one who shot the enemies the most times. And she did that with such a, well, focused way of playing that game that I really start to get the feeling that she uses her, well, of course I think that emotional reactions are part of herself, but I have the feeling that she knows how to use them for her advantage. So as you watch her during those tasks this time, you can see that she usually reacts emotional after the games, or let's say at the very end of them. So in task number 1, she argues with Emmanuel when they have to decide which tubes they choose, but during that slight, well, part, she does not overreact at all. And also in the second task, when she has to discuss with Emmanuel again, she also suddenly then reacts very emotional. And one more thing about that, Emmanuel also mentions something like, okay, calm down, Anke, we know your drama. So, sounded a bit like she knows that Anke sometimes, well, acts at overreacting instead of really overreacting. But, you know, there's never one thing that has only one side in DeMol, and that is that, well, during their tests we get to see Uma, Emmanuel and also Bert talking about those reactions of Anke, and yeah, Bert left the game. So we don't know who he actually filled his test out on, but he also talked about Anke's reaction. So it could either be a hint that it is not Anke, or they try to mislead us. As you know, nothing is what it seems like in DeMol. Now finally to task number 1, and it actually has to do with Anke's partner. Niels, I think, is his name, and what I recognized about him was that he wasn't to be seen so often. So we saw one shot of him when he finds that tube who lays on the ground, so he doesn't know if it is €10 or €1,000 tube, but then again it could have been him to put it there. There are so many options there, really, you can't figure it out by watching it. It could have been him, it could have been an other candidate, it could have been just a simple guest of that water park, it could have even been the wind to blow that thing down. So really, there's no way you can figure that out by watching the episode. But still, back to him, I think he is a bit in the background, and that of course, as DeMol's little helper, would have been a nice position to not to be so much in focus. Also, by the way, I just want to mention that I loved that task. I was already looking forward to it because it looked so cool, and now we had like, I mean, it was even better than I expected it to be. Like, there were those visitors involved in it, and then we had like, for the first time ever, a mole helper. That was really awesome. I really loved that. But there's one thing that I asked myself: if Philippe would have stayed, would have his visitor also been a helper? So was it planned that DeMol gets a helper from home, so that that person would have been involved very directly in the game? So I think they would have all been involved the way they were now. But the question really is, would they have allowed him to tell his, well, visitor to know that he is DeMol? I would have really liked to know that, and I'm hoping that they will explain that during the final maybe. But yeah, that is really an interesting thing, I think, and it was so much fun to watch. Now something more about task number 1, and 2 more people are found suspicious there, and that were Sven and his brother. At one point, his brother suddenly decided that it couldn't go on like that and that he would take over the responsibility and go up to the slides and well, coordinate everything. And it went very well with the 4-letter word, but not with the 5-letter word. So if he was a mole helper, then of course that would have also been a nice position to be in, because yeah, by counting wrong and sending people down that slide at the wrong time, he would have such huge influence in, well, succeeding or not succeeding that task. And at the same time, Sven was left down there alone. And this is something that makes him very suspicious, of course, because he was the only one who could still watch the TVs, and he was alone with the tubes they already had. And that would have, of course, given him a wonderful opportunity to change some of the tubes. So to take some 1,000 euro tubes away and put some 10 euro tubes there. Uma and Jens both were a little late with their letters sometimes, but that was actually the most suspicious thing I saw them doing. And Emmanuel, well, to be honest, I don't think she's the mole anymore, and that has to do with task number 2, which we had to now. So after what Emmanuel did in task number 1, which was opening that tube, although it was forbidden, you wouldn't have guessed, or let's say I would not have guessed, that they chose her as the most trusted person. Like, why? She just costed you 500 euro. But then they chose her and she got a very, very, very important position. And in that position, I think, after all, she did a brilliant job. And I think by the way she played it and by the success she had with playing it, it basically gets me to say that she is not the mole. I don't see why she would play like that if she is the mole. I think if you're the mole and if you have to be in that position, then you would just, well, decide to shoot all of them, get all the Passfragen and all the money out of the game, and you would have even have a nice like excuse for doing that. But she really played it with the goal to get some money in and to get a Passfrage for herself, and this is so candidate-like. And she also was like so happy when the 2,000 euro were earned that I really believe she is a candidate. The probably most important question in that task is which position would be the best one for the mole to be in. And the thing is, what would you do if you were the mole? Would you choose to go for Passfragen or for the money? And I guess in this situation, going for the money to act like a nice candidate seems the most logical for a mole. You don't need the Passfragen, you could use them as an alibi, but going for the money is the way to get rid of the money as well. And of course then Anke appears again. She was not only the person who was alone in the field at some point. We also didn't get to see her in that little house, so we got to see all of them more or less shortly while building those card houses. But with Anke, I think we didn't get to see any shot of her building that card house. And she also was very eager on just walking by Emmanuel. So even though Emmanuel said, I will shoot if you walk by, she did it. So I agree with Manu, who said at the end of the show that it would seem very logical for a mole to go for the money in that task. If the mole chose to act more like a selfish candidate, then there are only 2 people left, and those are either Uma or Sven. And about Jens in the task, which is somehow connected to what I said earlier about Jens, that he was suddenly so interested in succeeding while he was so honest to the others, which really got me like, Jens, what is going on with you? Because I would have never expected him to do that in the last weeks. Yeah, so if he is the mole, then he chose to act like a very honest and eager candidate now, and somehow I still don't see him as DeMol, but if you see him there, then please let me know. Also, let me know what you think would have been the best position for DeMol in that task number 2. Last but not least of this Hints and Theories video, I promised you to tell you a bit more about the special final we have. So at the end of this episode we got to see another mole briefing in which we hear that there is something special going on with the final. Now, yesterday GoPlay also uploaded a little video of Gilles writing letters. And he writes those letters to all candidates, to all participants of the show, in which he says like, hey friends, this is this 10th season of The Mole, we have to celebrate that, and I invite you, as well as all other people of Flanders, to join in on that final. So they will do a live final. And there's one very interesting thing he also mentions, and that is that he says that you can get a role in this game. That of course all leads to the assumption that we not only have a live final this time, but also one last live game during that final. And I mean, how cool is that? Now, I was about to say that were all hints and theories to episode number 5 and that there were a lot of Anke hints and theories this time, which definitely wasn't planned like that but turned out like that. But then I remembered I even have one more hint to Anke. And that one has to do with her hands, or let's say with her fingers, because I'm sure you know that sometimes the mole likes to show like an M with his or her fingers. So we have seen it several times also in the Dutch WIDM, and yeah, it keeps appearing and people keep watching out for it, and it has already appeared several times in my timeline today, which is why I just have to mention it. And there's one scene where the candidates have to write a list of whom they trust or not, so that they know who will be in the very interesting position Manu got in the end. And we get to see Anke writing her list, and with her hand she does a very weird, well, move. She has a very weird hand position, so I will put the photo in here so that you can have a look at it. And now, yeah, that were all hints and theories to episode number 5 now, definitely. Let me know what you think about them, let me know if you have spotted anything else that I have not mentioned yet, and also let me know who you suspect to be DeMol right now, all down there in the comments. If you don't want to miss any other hints and theories videos, then please don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram, and remember that I will post those little changes of the crazy figure there. And you can also still join our international Facebook group if you would like to. Until the next video, I wish you so much fun figuring out who the mole is. Bye!